Okay. Well, hello. My name is Jeff Grabill, and I'm a faculty member in a department called Writing, Rhetoric, and American Cultures. In fact, in August, I'll be chair of that department, so you will never see me again. My creative activity will cease instantly. I also, hopefully not, I also direct a research center with Bill Hart-Davidson called Writing in Digital Environments, and some of the work that I'm going to talk to you about today comes out of some research and development work that we've been doing in that center over the last 5 or 6 years. And in September, I helped found an educational technology company called Drawbridge that owns the technology we'll talk a little bit today. It's a company that's also owned by the university, and so starting that venture is something that Carrie can talk a little bit more intelligently about, but I'm happy to talk with you about if you guys have questions about how we did that. I'll try and give you honest answers and not make things up because they sound good, which is my general response to answering questions, is to lie to you through my teeth constantly. So, Bert, you didn't know this when you invited me, is that I was just going to make up stories the entire time. So let me tell you a little bit about what Eli is and our path towards getting Eli out into the world, which is exactly the language that we've always used and always had in our head as we've thought about Eli, and talk to you as best I can about the decisions we made and the lessons that we've learned to this point in time. So Eli, we invented Eli by mistake. So what we were trying to do with Eli is, so let me back up. I've been in conversations with a number of people outside the university about commercializing ideas that have been generated by the research center that I helped direct. Almost from the first 6 months that we were in operation, there were people that I knew and people who came to know us who thought that there was a tremendous amount of innovation possibility in the domain of writing instruction and writing education. And this is surprising to a lot of people, but actually not too terribly surprising when you think about the amount of writing-intensive knowledge work that takes place, not just in school, but also takes place in organizations. So keeping an eye on commercialization possibilities is something that, that we've done almost since the very beginning of WIDE. But in fact, Eli was a mistake. So what we were doing when we invented Eli was we were working at the College of Business on trying to develop some innovative ways to teach organizational communication, and ways that scaled beyond the university. So we were trying to do some stuff that was useful and that would be adopted by the College of Business, certainly, but we were trying to do it in such a way that it would be useful for audiences outside the university. So what were we trying to do? Well, we were trying to reduce the amount of instructional time to the fewest number of student-teacher contact hours as possible. So we're trying to compress the number of hours. We were trying to compress the curriculum, and we were trying to leverage what we understood via the research to work in writing instruction. And so the work that we were doing was the most conceptually, theoretically, and pedagogically tight course design and course delivery that we've ever done in our careers as academics. And it turns out that it worked. But it worked, but it didn't work at first. So what didn't work was we had to find a way to teach writing that didn't rely on the teacher to provide all the review feedback. Well, it turns out that there are some very standard, commonplace pedagogical practices in writing instruction that we call peer review, but are really just a species of peer learning. And I'm going to come back to peer learning in relationship to Eli, because I think that's actually really the big idea. So we were trying to figure out a way to leverage the power of peer learning, because we didn't have the time and space in that instructional environment for teachers to review the work of students. We had to have students do all of the review feedback given the constraints that we'd placed on ourselves. And the students had to get good at it. So not only did we have to have a way to do high-quality review work that fed high-quality revision, because the learning theory we were working with here is that all learning and writing happens in revision. That's a little bit hyperbolic, but not too terribly much. The research is pretty clear about what helps people get better at writing. They have to revise. And they have to revise. They have to do high-quality revisions. They have to learn from those revisions. They have to be able to execute those revisions again and again and again. Well, one of the things that is required for high-quality revisions is high-quality review feedback. And so one of the things that doesn't happen in many instructional contexts is the teaching of review. So we realized that in order to facilitate the high-quality revisions that we needed to facilitate, we had to be able to teach review. And you can't teach what you can't see. And so one of the problems that writing teachers everywhere have is the ability to see review feedback. And this is true in lots of instructional contexts. If you can't see the ways in which students are responding to each other, then as a teacher, you have no way of intervening and teaching those review and revision processes. So these problems of efficiency and problems of visibility were the problems that we couldn't solve with existing technologies. We tried everything we could, leveraging the most common review and revision pedagogies in the world are Microsoft Word plus email. So we tried all of those existing technologies, and we simply couldn't do it. We were failing. And so we realized pretty quickly that we needed to invent a technology that allowed us to do that. And so that was the happy accident, as we invented Eli, which is in Eli per se is a service focused on writing instruction. Its commercial implementation right now is in the writing instruction market in higher education and K-12 education. What Eli really is a generalized review service. And the way in which we're framing it and reframing it over the next year is to support peer-to-peer learning in education. This is the really hard problem. Teaching computer programming or whatever to 10 million people or 10 gigillion people, in the way in which people are trying to do that is the easiest thing in the world. That's the easiest, that's the lowest hanging fruit and not particularly interesting fruit in my view. In other words, if the problem of education that people are trying to solve with massive online education is the transfer of information from point A to point B, let them have it. That's low quality, that's a low value proposition. I don't think that scales in particularly interesting ways to increasing access to education. The way to teach complex things in complex ways that have high value and high value propositions, different kinds of modalities and technologies are going to have to be brought to bear. And one of those is peer-to-peer learning. People are going to have to help each other get better at doing complex things. And they're going to have to do more complex things than filling in bubble sheets. In order to do massively online education and in a way which is high value education. So this is actually an area that we're deeply interested in for intellectual and now for commercial reasons, and we see Eli as our first foray into that world. So Eli was an accident, and then so the question became, we invented it, we developed it in our own classrooms at the College of Business. And then the question became, what do we do now? It was pretty clear to us that we had something. And every teacher who used Eli, and the Eli that people were using at this point in time, it was duct tape and spit and twine, and it was MacGyver code. It was awful. But we managed to make it work. And with a lot of patience and love and tender care and good wishes. But even in that state, the value proposition to teachers is pretty clear. And what we could anticipate, and this wasn't built into Eli at the time, are the analytic possibilities. So this notion of visibility, what you can do when you can see things, and what you can do when you can count what you can see, and the kinds of analytics that are possible in relationship to that, this is where also a lot of magic, I think, will happen around Eli in the future. So Carrie mentioned in passing in her presentation that there are a couple of patents associated with Eli, and there are, but Eli per se is not patentable. But we have an algorithm that's associated with Eli that is the source of one patent, and I honestly can't remember what the second one is. The patent process is intellectually fascinating, but otherwise is mind-numbing. But so then the question was, we knew we had something. What are we going to do with it? And this is where I want to come back to this notion of getting ideas out in the world to make a difference. So, as academics and certainly as partners in this research center, what Bill and I were most interested in doing is precisely that, getting ideas out in the world so that they could make a difference. And software for us from the very beginning of WIDE was really just a materialization of ideas, right? It's theory made material. So what Eli is and what all the software is that we've made, they're just simply ideas. And one of the ways that our ideas live in the world as academics is they live in the world as books and articles and book chapters and the kinds of things that academics typically produce. I'm bored with that. That's not that's not that interesting to me anymore. And certainly we could have written books, and we could have written a number of articles to our colleagues. 6 people would have read them. My mother would have read them. She would have written about it on Facebook, and life would have gone on. But we were interested in something else with Eli and some of the other things that we're doing. We were interested in making a difference, honestly, in the way in which writing is taught in the United States. So I am unashamedly a romantic and an idealist in this regard, and I have no problem standing up in front of people saying that what we're really trying to do with Eli is change the way people teach writing. And we knew that the only way we could change the way people teach writing, and we don't think Eli is the only arrow in our quiver in that regard, was to get Eli into the hands of as many people as quickly as possible at the lowest cost possible, in a way which was sustainable. And this is a really hard problem, and Dean's going to talk a little bit more, hopefully, about open source. So one of the things that we instantly thought about was, is this something that we could do? And doing the math, we just didn't think that open source was a viable path for us. There's not a built-in group of developers out there interested in making writing software. We have no capacity to sustain a developer community anyway, nor did we have any capacity to sustain a user community. So one of the worst things that could have happened, actually, as a commercial enterprise right now, one of the worst things that could happen to us, but it would be a problem we'd be happy to solve, is to have 20,000 users next week. As a commercial venture, we would have a hard time supporting those 20,000 users next week. We would like to be able to solve that problem. That's a nice problem to have. But these issues of sustainability and scale are very hard problems. And so in our running of the math, the only way that we could think to make this work, that is to sustain the operation and to make a difference in the world, was to commercialize this. And that was a very complicated process that I won't go into in any detail, but I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can. But fundamentally what we've done was in creating a company and spinning a company out of the university to which we've licensed this technology and a few other technologies with MSU as a partner, what we've tried to do is maintain some control and some integrity over our inventions to allow us to achieve the goals that we've wanted to achieve as intellectuals and as human beings and now as business people. But also to do that in a way which is sustainable, in a way in which we can keep some eye on integrity, and I'll hopefully try to do this the right way and to do a little good at the same time. So I don't know whether we've learned any lessons other than starting a business and trying to help run a business as a founder with hands off as I am, is unquestionably the most difficult thing I've ever been involved in. This is mind-numbingly difficult work. So maybe one lesson is don't. But I actually don't want to communicate that. But do this, get some help, use the university resources to help you through this process. Talk to as many people as possible and find some people who have expertise in areas where you don't have expertise, because the work of making software that lives as a commercial product and attending to the commercialization process and the sustainability of that enterprise is exceptionally difficult work. There's lots of time, right?
9 minutes.
9 minutes? Excellent. Questions, thoughts about Eli, about the process? Yeah, go ahead.
How long and how much time did you wind up spending talking back and forth with MSU's intellectual property community?
Carrie, I don't know. How long did the process take for us? A year or so?
It depends on when you consider it started.
Right.
I mean, we've been talking about Eli since probably for a couple years.
Right.
But the actual negotiations were probably 6 months, maybe.
Yeah, they went really fast once we got serious about it. And the time lag, it took us longer than I wanted it to take, but it was not MSU. MSU was not the reason we were slow. I was the reason we were slow. So trying to line our ducks up on our side of the equation to make sure we did this the right way was very hard to do, because this was new to me. Does that answer your question? That was the same question? How crazy is that? Because we're like on the same wavelength.
So how is the business going?
Well, how is the business going? I own a large percentage of Zero at this point in time. It is. Startups are really hard. It's rocky. It's exceptionally difficult. But despite that, it's going pretty well. So last year we had 2,000, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 paid users of Eli at Michigan State University, and we did that with absolutely no sales and marketing whatsoever. Okemos Public Schools used Eli last year, no sales and marketing whatsoever. We had a number of highly successful what are called class tests or research-based uses. All of them successful. The most successful one at West Point. So the West Point is going to be a user. That faculty member went to Washington State. So we have a 700 license use at the University of Rhode Island happening next year. So we'll have over the next couple of years on our own with no sales and marketing. So getting a sales and marketing operation up and going when you're not really a sales and marketing company. We're not going to have 200 salespeople running around the country selling this thing. So how do you sell? You have to sell this. This is crazy, right? How do you sell this without sales and marketing? Finding partners in the appropriate markets to help us with this has been where most of our effort has existed. So I am hopeful that within the next 2 months we'll be able to announce a very significant partnership in higher education, which will instantly make Eli available to every college and university in the country, with the sales and marketing enterprise to back it. So we've been doing a lot of really hard, quiet work to this point in time. But what's been beneficial is that where we've had an opportunity to show Eli, people have bought it.
Would you have time to demonstrate a few features of it or something? I was kind of hoping to see a little bit of how it works.
I don't actually, to keep the time, but how much time do I have? All right, so let me try and show you something. Try and do this in an intelligent way. So we're right in the middle of pushing. Oh, I'm going to have to remember my password now. I don't know if I know it. Yeah, that's what it should be. Oh my gosh. See, now you've just witnessed something that is truly divine. Yeah, I don't know how I did that. This is magic. This is magic. So what you're looking at a teacher view. So let me go to an old course. So Eli is a, let me explain something really fast about this. Eli is a review service. So, and it's intended to be a simple service. It's not intended to be a learning management system. We don't want it to grow and scale in that regard. It's actually intended to bolt into LMSs. So some of the very quiet conversations that we've been having with people is bolting Eli into many of the LMSs that MSU is considering and adopting or adopting over the next, however many months. And so what teachers do with Eli are really two very simple things. One of them is really boring, and one of them is more interesting. The really boring thing is that teachers create assignments. Big surprise. And students respond to those assignments by writing into Eli or copying and pasting text into Eli or uploading text into Eli. On our development arc, by the end of the year, we'll have the ability to deal with media, multimedia, a little bit more effectively than we deal with it now. That's all the boring stuff. The more interesting stuff is when teachers create reviews and structure reviews, and students participate and conduct reviews. It's in the creation and structuring of reviews where teachers enact all of the important pedagogical practices, right? So how a teacher sets up a review, the criteria, how those criteria are taught, understood by students, how those criteria are used by students in the conduct of a review. That's where all of the teaching and learning magic happens. And by the way, this is in the conduct of a review by both teachers and students. This is what our analytics pay attention to on the back end. So one of the analytics that are the subject of the patent we compute a helpfulness score for students. So we can track if a student gets more or less helpful over time by using I think seven different variables and weighting those variables differently, 7 different activities in the system. So what you're seeing here, let me give you real quick. So what you're seeing there are archived assignments and archived reviews of an old class of mine. And let me pull up an old review. And so what you're seeing here, let me show you something. Let me just cut to the chase and show you something that's sort of really important. What you're seeing here is something that no writing teacher in the country is able to see. And that is a dashboard view of not just all of the writing activity in her classroom, but all of the review activity in her classroom. No writing teacher in the world can see this right now. Now, whether or not seeing that activity is transformative or not, that's a different question. But right now, in order to see what I'm showing you actually in this display, I would have to somehow collect all of those papers. It's the milk crate, what we call the milk crate problem. And whether it's a paper milk crate or a digital milk crate, it's still a milk crate problem. Somehow, as a teacher, in order to see what I'm showing you in this interface, I have to be able to collect 20 to 25 papers. Oh, and by the way, collect the reviews on those 20 to 25 papers, whether they're written on separate sheets of paper, whether they're written in the margins of paper, and whether that's analog or digital, it doesn't matter. Nothing right now aggregates and collects this information and makes it available to a teacher. So what I can see right now are Laurel's performance in relationship to one of the review types we have is essentially a criteria matching. It's a binary, yes or no. Does this thing exist or not exist in a text? And so I see what the class averages are on this, and I see that what Laurel did on this. This is actually a bad choice because Laurel wasn't there that day. But here's Rebecca. What I can also see is all of Rebecca's feedback from various students. And I can endorse this feedback or I cannot endorse this feedback as a teacher. But I can see it. I can see it. I can teach it. I can help Lauren get better at responding to Rebecca. And I can interact with this review feedback and say to Rebecca, you need to pay attention to everything that Lauren has said to you because this is just rocket science good reviewing activity. So what I'm showing you here real fast, and then I'll stop now, are the two primary value propositions that teachers see immediately. One is, I can do in 50 minutes what it used to take me 2 to 3 class periods using Microsoft Word and email or paper. And 2, I can see my class activity in one computer interface. I can see what I've never been able to see before as a teacher. Now I can teach it. I can see it, I can value it, I can teach it, I can grade it. I can do all sorts of things with it as a writing teacher that I couldn't do before because I simply couldn't see it. So those are 2 immediate value propositions. Teachers, the more experienced the teacher, the more easily they associate with it. And then there's downstream, there's more analytic possibilities and certainly more programmatic data that schools are much more interested in that's associated with the use of Eli. So quick, inadequate, I realize. I apologize, I'm probably a little bit over time, but this is really what we're trying to get at with respect to Eli. And this is, by the way, straight down the middle of the road, research-based writing pedagogy. We're really not, we're not on the bleeding edge of what works in writing instruction. And I actually think that that's important in terms of the value proposition of what Eli is about. All right, thanks.